And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow morning's flying weather, IFR, Brooks Range out to the eastern Arctic coast. And IFR here, some areas of IFR through the central interior, improving south of the Alaska Range with some VFR breaking out, Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, back over Bristol Bay there, and then some IFR, Nunivak Island across the Pribilof, but north of the eastern Aleutians, and then along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast across Kodiak Island, IFR there as well, and then into the Gulf, and then just staying off the southeast coast, but some marginal VFR here right along the south coast, but pretty good over the inside channels as well as the eastern North Gulf Coast. And no change down that way for Thursday afternoon. Good VFR all through this area. And some VFR holding here, northern Cook Inlet and up into the Susitna Valley. IFR as you head north out of the valley there up toward the park and into the Talkeetna's IFR and Alaska Range and up over the Upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, and then VFR that expands here as over the west coast from the Kuskokwim Delta all the way up to the Noatak Valley, northwest coast there, and just southwest of Point Lay. IFR for the North Slope, but not quite as extensive. As you can see here tomorrow morning, that diminishes in the afternoon. And the Bering Sea, still some IFR in the southeast Bering Sea, affecting mainly the Pribilof Islands, affecting only the Pribilof Islands, and marginal for the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, staying IFR here, Kodiak. And IFR continues for Kodiak Island into Friday morning. Next extends up into Resurrection Bay, western Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, much of the southeast interior, and up back around along the Alaska Range there, otherwise marginal, but VFR here, northern Yukon Delta, up to the western Brooks Range, east-northeastward here across the upper Yukon Valley. IFR along and just north of the Brooks Range. And the southeast coast here, Yakutat included, looking really good, good VFR. But that doesn't hold into the afternoon. Marginal VFR moves across the entire area. There was some IFR up around Lynn Canal, possibly near or east of Juneau. And southeast part of the state, IFR, otherwise marginal on down into Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island improving. A little bit of IFR persisting on the east side there through the afternoon. Yukon River in the VFR zone, right on down to Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, VFR. Right up into the Chukchi Sea, but the North Slope and Arctic coast occasionally marginal. And not too bad out over the Bering Sea. Areas of marginal VFR, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Next zone of IFR coming into Shimianatu to about Kiska Island. And then for passes tomorrow, Anatuvik and Adigan look pretty marginal throughout the day. Lowest conditions on the northern entrance of both those passes. For Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR. Same forecast for rainy as well. Windy, IFR, especially on the north entrance. And Isabel, IFR. And Mentesta go marginal there at times. Tanita, same forecast, marginal VFR. And for Portage, marginal VFR. Chilkoot and White, yet another VFR day coming up for both those passes. Freezing levels, 2,000 to 4,000 feet here, southeast Bering Sea, right along the North Gulf Coast, up to 6,000 feet, though, up into the northern Panhandle. And out to the west, about 2,000 feet here, central western Bering Sea, all the way down to the Aleutians, but the surface way up just north of St. Lawrence Island. Icing with that front that's slowly moving northward. Still have a lot of moisture out here over the southeast Bering Sea, so considerable moderate rime icing extends from actually the southern Kenai Peninsula, Kachemak Bay and the Barren Islands, and then a more extensive zone of that considerable moderate rime icing from Kuskokwim Bay out across the Pribilofs, tapering off down in toward Atka Island. Jet stream, we've got east-southeast 65 to 80 knot winds here, or actually, west-northwest, or basically westerly winds coming over this ridging here over the Bering Sea, 55 to 85 knots there, and then strongest over in Canada. Otherwise, about 50 knots from the south-southeast or west into the eastern North Gulf Coast. 9,000 feet, very light winds, Gulf of Alaska Panhandle, all of the interior here. Gets a little breezy up along the western central Arctic coast out of the east-northeast now at 20 to as high as 30 knots, strongest on the western coast, that line there. And then 25-knot easterlies around the Pribilofs turn northeast, increase to about 40 knots here across the west central Aleutians. And 3,000 feet, we've got northeast winds here from the interior right out into the Bering Sea, getting up to 40 knots, and then 45 to 50 knot northerlies there across the west central Aleutians. Light over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, as you can see. Pretty light wind conditions here, a little breezier, but nothing too significant there. Around the Barren Islands, Bristol Bay, light variable winds over for the Panhandle with that high right off the coast. And turbulence smooth, southern Alaska to Kodiak, across the Gulf, southeast coast, no significant turbulence at all. Could be some considerable moderate turbulence here for the western Arctic coast, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and in the interior here with those stronger northeast winds. And the best chance of some moderate turbulence will be over the west central Aleutians, Adak out to about Kiska Island.